Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Blame It on Marketing. We've got two lovely content writers with us today, one from B2C, one from B2B, and we're going to be discussing the topic of we just need more content. I will hand over to our content writers to introduce yourselves. Let's start with Emily.
Hello. I am Emily. Thank you very much for having me. As a B2C copywriter, I guess, I've been working freelance for nearly 5 years, working on lots of different projects, helping businesses with their content, I guess.
Hi everyone, great to be here. I'm Ettie. I'm a B2B copywriter, freelance. Been doing it for coming on for a decade now, so don't know where that's gone. And particularly, I do B2B tech, but particularly HR tech and recruitment tech.
To kick off, I want to get into what do we mean when we say content writer, or even actually content marketer more specifically. So Ettie, let's start with you. What do you think? What does it all mean?
Big life question there. What does it all mean? I think for me. So I describe myself as a writer and strategist, but that's been the last few years in my career I've moved more towards the strategy side. But I think that part of the complication comes that really writers can be anything from inverted commas just a writer through to strategist, advisor, interviewer, writer, marketer, and you can pick up different parts of those according to where your interests lie. So for me, it's very much the strategy and the content writing side, but everyone describes differently.
And Emily, is that the same for you? Is that how you would describe yourself as well?
Yeah, I was just going to say, going on what Ettie's just said, just a writer is often the opener. And then content marketer means so much to so many different people. I think in my day-to-day role, I'm also stakeholder manager. I've often been project manager. It's about having those lines of communications with different teams. It's really also creating content for lots of different channels where there should possibly be dedicated professionals for that. I'm thinking social media. But yeah, content marketing just comes under this umbrella, and it's such a huge, there's such a vast range of what people expect, I think. I have definitely reined everyone in that I work with when it comes to managing expectations, because at the end of the day, there's no point in me claiming to be, great at running PPC as well as social media and all of this stuff, which is where freelance comes in as a wonderful gift, because there are other professionals that manage that. I think when you're looking at roles in-house, I would be very dubious of anyone that could fit into all of those requirements as just one person. Yeah, there's a lot, isn't there?
Agreed. I've never met a content person, whatever their job title is, that is the same as somebody else that I've met. It's like such a variety, and I think also what companies need changes so much, especially when it comes to content writing and content marketing based on what you're doing, what sector you're in, blah, 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 blah. But so going back to content marketing, what do you both see as the purpose of content marketing? And I'm curious to see if that's different for you both, since you're in different kind of, consumer sectors.
Yeah, I guess from my side, it can be really varied, as varied as the business you're talking to, really. It is huge in B2B. Content is for most people a primary way of acquiring leads. So it is big, but you've got the brand awareness side, but then you've also got the sales activation side. So I think content can tie into whichever part you want it to be tying into, and should realistically be tying into all of those bits. I would say the main thing is making sure that, which Emily, I don't know if it's the same for you, but making sure there is a purpose, which I know we'll dig into in a second, kind of some of the areas that we see clients go wrong, but not having a sense of purpose and just saying, all our competitors are doing content, and, for me in my world, HR tech's really crowded, so everyone's doing content, and it becomes this game of one-upmanship where everyone invests because everyone else is investing. And often when you actually pin down, well, why are we spending that? Why is that line item here? And why are we breaking it down the way we're breaking it down? Or would it be better going into, webinars or PPC or out of home or whatever? People don't have an answer for that. And actually that's such a bad way to market.
Yeah, I think coming from my perspective as an SEO copywriter as well, typically the overall purpose, the overarching purpose when a client comes to me is I need visibility online, and often they don't have the visibility because that has never been their focus before, or someone has said we need to be ranking in Google, which is that's a whole other podcast, isn't it? The number of times. So I think generating leads, absolutely. At the end of the day, we're measuring conversions, aren't we? We're measuring the quality of content that's going to be funneling people down in order to do an action, to do something. Sometimes that is not why someone has reached out. They just know they need to update their website regularly and they want blogs, and there's no real purpose. And I often feel like that is a sad way to kind of view it as a function. And then there are other clients that I've worked with that just are in a habit, I guess, of even if the platform isn't right for them, they generate content and publish it because that's what they've always done. So it's for leads, it's for brand awareness, and when all of those things, I guess, are in place, sometimes it is just habit. I'm not complaining, that habit pays the bills, but it would be really, really interesting to see if more people start to have a strategy for their content as we go into 2023. That's my experience with what happens with the content at the moment.
Yeah, and I think from it also there's this idea of the strategies needing to fit together. So there's the content, you can say you have a purpose for content marketing, but if that's fundamentally at odds with your purpose for marketing as a whole, or the business unit as a whole, or the brand, or the sub-brand within the overall group, I think there's this sense that every set of strategies has to tie back into this overarching objective, or else you end up with a kind of subsection that might be performing well according to its own strategic objectives, but they're the wrong strategic objectives for the business. So it's not, I think any marketer really should be able to say, we're doing this ultimately because this will help us hit, the second and third of the business objectives for this year, and this is how it will help us do that, rather than saying, as you say, Emily, with SEO particularly, you get this, we want to rank for these terms, and actually even if you're successful and you do a great job and you rank for those terms, if they're not the right terms and they're not aligned to the business goals, then that's a pointless objective to have had.
Yeah, and it also goes back to that, like, creating content for the sake of creating content, right? Because, which is obviously like partly why this episode's named what it's named, because that's, I think, and we'll get into the misconceptions around content in a minute, but I think that's part of the problem. It's like, so it's great, you've got all this content, you've got ebooks, you've got blogs, you've got your, but how is it all tied together? How does it fit together? How are you actually using it to drive conversions, like you said, Emily? Because otherwise it's just sitting there, and then more and more what we tend to see is Google, if that is your end goal, is that you need, you want to drive organic traffic to your website, which who doesn't want that? It's going to be confused. It's just going to basically think you're Wikipedia of like your subject, right? And it's going to think that you don't sell anything. So it's like finding that balance of like having content with a purpose that drives conversions, and also not just doing it for the sake of it. So I'm going to ask you that question then, ladies. So what are some of the big misconceptions and mistakes businesses make when it comes to creating their content?
Oh, I have to go first on this one. Sorry, Ettie, but it is, I usually write the content myself. It's the misconception is often copy doesn't matter, therefore Bill in accounts writes it in his spare time, or I don't know, someone has a passion for this business and so they spend their time writing these blogs. And I think often people really do think they can string a sentence together, therefore their copy will be fine on web in particular. I'll use that as an example, when actually they haven't taken time to understand how users use the internet and how we take in information, and also simple things like internal linking or, user experience when people land on that content. Is it what they want to see? It's all of this stuff. But yeah, one of the biggest misconceptions is everybody can write.
Yeah, I think in B2B it's probably slightly different in the sense that there tends to be already like big investment into the content ecosystem. So you'd rarely have a situation, I mean, you might get a particularly engaged CEO, for example. I mean, for me personally, I often work with scale-ups that aren't that far away from their startup roots. And so you often get then like a founding team who still are retaining the ideals of, this is my baby and I'm going to write everything, and we're kind of bringing people in reluctantly. But, almost always that's not the case. I might be working with teams that have, 10 other content writers, and it's quite structured. So I'd say from my side, one of the big misconceptions is really more about how that content gets produced. Maybe that there's not a good process, that if everyone doesn't know what everyone's meant to be doing and have a really clear sense of how, it's like a big mechanical watch, I suppose. And so if you don't have a really clear sense of how the parts all fit together, then it just won't work. It won't tell the time properly. And so I'd say that's one thing. And then also that in B2B specifically, it's often content gets divorced from sales, and it just can't be. I mean, Mark Ritson, the marketing professor, says that in B2B 70% of execution is your sales force. So really your content team can't not have a good relationship with sales, and that's about producing content that sales want to see, but also talking to sales who have this amazing direct line into all your customers and finding out, which assets people are asking for, which questions get asked, which objections, what they need to sell more. So it's this constant tying back to how we're producing something that drives value for the team at the end of the day the business relies on.
Can I add one? I know I'm not.
Yeah,
qualified.
You can. We'll judge. We'll judge from afar.
Yeah, judge please. Tell me what you think. Whenever I talk to clients that have never had a content function yet, so they might have written some stuff, but not really with a process and a purpose and all of those things, I always stress really, really, really hard that content is two things. One, half of it is content production, so making and writing and producing the actual content, and the other half is content promotion. And if you don't do the other half, unless you're already a huge brand that has a huge following and you've got somewhere to distribute that content, there's almost no point doing the content production, because if you're just going to stick it up on your blog and never talk about it anywhere else and never use it anywhere, chances of you actually finding benefit and it being worth the investment are super low. What do you guys think about that?
Definitely. Yeah. I think in the consumer world, that happens for smaller brands in particular that I work with, who assume that people will already know them or have heard of their brand because they're so immersed in their own company. And often I'll say, where is this going? What is the overall intention for this blog or article or white paper? And they'll just say, oh, it's going to go on the website. And it's like, oh, we'll all just discover this then. And it can be quite disheartening because it's those two kind of marrying the idea of content together, those two kind of actions. They seem so obvious to us, but for so many businesses, they're just not. It just doesn't it's not their job to think about it, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess from a B2B perspective, I'd also add the promotion side, I think, does get attention. Again, often because budgets are bigger. So you end up, people typically would come to me, say, with a very clear idea of, we want an ebook and we're going to have LinkedIn ads, and then the LinkedIn ads are going to drive here, and we've got a landing page, and then we're tracking it all. So that kind of bit tends to be more in. But what I constantly see is you say to them, okay, great, people are reading the download, they're getting the ebook, they've landed on the landing page, then what? And it's that you end up with lots of separate content tracks of like which teams put, I mean, these aren't inconsiderable investments. Often a brand might put, say, like 10 grand into an ebook like track. And then, you know, next quarter they've forgotten about it and they're doing the next ebook and the next ebook. And there's not anyone sitting in the center of the web going, well, how's this pulling to our email nurture track, and what's like which conversations are sales having with them. And so I think that piece that comes kind of slightly after promotion of how do we wring the most value from the leads we're getting.
Yeah, it's a huge education piece, because I think Ruta and I have both had the jobs where we've been the person who's orchestrated the whole shooting match, if you like, where you're going all the way from the production through to the promotion, right? And so we've been the people who've had equally had the frustration where we've been like, this is how it should pull through into sales, and worked with the sales team to try and help, you know, educate them that this is not just a beautiful, pretty ebook that we've created. This is how this changes, you know, and influences what we're trying to do. And this is how it's, you know, talks to our customers' pain points and all that kind of stuff. It's just so challenging, isn't it, Ruta, to sit in the middle of that? Even though you're like this, yeah.
You have to do it. Yeah, you have to do it intentionally, right? Like, sales is never just going to pick up some bit of content that you wrote and like go to town. So like you have to literally write them the sales email templates, write them summaries about what the content was about, give them the PDF shorts that they need to, you know, attach in the email with the right link. Like if you need sales involved, like just give them everything. Like write the LinkedIn post that they can riff off, literally everything, and then you can start getting engagement. Also like feed them and like get them into like a fun meeting, and you'll get results. But it's very intentional. It almost never happens by accident. At least I've never seen it happen by accident.
There are always a couple of really good salespeople who get it, who will read it as well, is the key thing. Like, did you? Here's the ebook. Did you read it? You tumbleweeds. Love them, but they don't necessarily read it. But yeah, it's like you will always get a few advocates in there, won't you, of like, oh, I've read it, I actually think this is amazing, this is going to be really useful to my customers. It's probably interesting, actually, that I would say, I don't know this for sure, we could look it up. I would imagine that salespeople that do engage with that kind of content actually are probably better, actually do perform better as salespeople than the ones that just brush it off and go, yeah, sure, I'll just copy and paste your LinkedIn draft that you sent and I'll make no tweaks to it at all. I'd love to see that data. Has anyone done a study on that? I need to look it up.
Yeah, and I think it becomes this like vicious cycle or virtuous circle, as the phrase goes, doesn't it? Because it come back to this idea of working with sales, but in organizations where that alignment hasn't been there from the beginning, then sales are probably sat there going, marketing don't do anything useful, and they haven't made me anything useful, and they're not helping me hit my targets, and I'm under all this pressure to bring in leads, and marketing don't do anything. And then you're there going, well, actually we did all of this last quarter because we know it will be useful to you. You know, I've worked with people, you can almost see someone's eyes light up. There's this client I work with, one of my favorite clients. I've worked with them about 5 years now. And when their sales team kind of we started this kind of alignment piece right when I started working with them. And when sales realized they could like email me and be like, hey, would you write a case study about this? Like, I keep being asked, and I'm like, yeah, sure, I'll have that for you like in 2 weeks. You could see their eyes light up when they realized that like marketing was designed to like serve the same goals as them, and we should all be working together.
Yeah, I love it when the penny drops. Like, we're here to help.
Yeah, we are all pulling in the same direction, hopefully.
One of the things that I wanted to talk about, Ettie, and I'm just always interested in your opinion on this, is obviously like one of the things we try to do with content is try to balance the quality with, probably, depending on what it is, some SEO stuff as well, because we still need to keep it human, and also trying to get stuff out the door. And I'm just interested in your perspective of how you try and strike that balance with people.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, the quantity debate is as old as time and as frustrating as time, if that's a thing. And you do get clients very much, I get people messaging me and saying, we want, 50 blog posts around, this is our keyword grouping and this is what we want. And they'll actually put out a load of low quality content that has still cost them. They could probably, for the same investment, could have like made a high quality short funnel, and instead they've poured the investment into going like low level but really broad. So I mean, from my perspective, I do almost no what I would call like SEO writing, in the sense that everything I write would take into account SEO. I'm always looking at key terms. If an organization has the research, I'll look at their research, or I'll do my own research. But it's for me, it's a bit of a red flag. Clients going, we want a load of SEO articles, and also from a freelance perspective, it normally means there's not going to be a price alignment. I say to people as politely as I can put it that if what you actually want is a high volume of shorter articles, it's really not going to be cost effective to work with me on that you can find that somewhere else. So yeah, that's my take on it.
I was just going to touch on writing for SEO. I find this so weird, and Fiverr and Upwork and other platforms that offer these incredibly cheap ways to get content is a wash of briefs that are like 50 articles all around this one topic, and it's ugh. And again, this is a classic case of people clinging to the notion that SEO is what they need, and so this is what they've heard is going to be the best way to do it. Basically, create spammy, low quality content that isn't actually helping anyone, often with no purpose, like no call to actions. There's no kind of thought after these blogs are published what happens. And yeah, I don't touch them with a barge pole. I use SEO in my freelance copywriter title as a way to kind of go on a research piece with a client. So when I'm working with someone who wants to understand what people are looking for when it comes to their brand or their business, then great, let's use SEMrush or SEMrush, however you say it, and go on that journey with them. Research is amazing if someone's engaged with you. If they just say to you, create a load of blogs off, I don't know, whatever keywords, I'm like, no.
Yeah, that we want to target HR technology, and we're doing a whole load of blog posts around the HR technology, and I'm like, okay, but what's your position? Like, what's like, do we have a position? Are we just hoping that by spraying money at a key term, there's people are going to come and then buy from you? What is going on with this decision making?
SEO it's fairly complex, right? So there's a lot of education that needs to go in when someone who isn't necessarily very well educated in SEO but has been told, oh, we need to do this SEO thing that you need to do, especially in HR tech, because like for most of the keywords that I am concerned about for my clients, they're almost non-competitive now. Like you just can't touch them anymore. They're like 60, 70 difficulty, and you're going to have to pour in probably hundreds of thousands of pounds to compete with those. So you need to find a different way to use content to win, essentially, which is through having your own point of view, making it referenceable, maybe doing some original research, which is going to get you lots of attention. And there's other ways of doing stuff, not just through SEO, which sometimes isn't very feasible anymore, depending on what sector you're in.
Just touching on something you said, Ruta, about SEO being complex, there's definitely a reason why it has to be a team's job. It can't be down to like your content team or your copywriters to manage the whole what it takes to perform well in search, because that just is such an impossible feat. But the other side of it is I really don't want clients to be afraid of SEO or think of it as this dark art, because I think lots of people have been able to create a lot of mystery around it, when actually that mystery should not, that it needs to be dissolved, because I promise it is not as complex or layered as people have made people think, or businesses think.
Oh, you're going to put all those SEO agencies out of a job, Emily.
Well, I know.
Who are like, we are magicians.
Yeah, I've worked with lots of brands and businesses that have been burnt, and it's such a shame, because if a brand isn't engaged with a huge channel, a huge potential for marketing, i.e. online search, then you've got your work cut out. And it's unfortunate that there are unscrupulous people out there just trying to make money from the lack of knowledge or awareness, I think, when it comes to SEO.
Yeah, and I guess so often you can rank for terms, but then if the content itself, so like a good example, completely not B2B at all, but all these endless Google results for recipes. And it's like a running joke that everyone's in on, that no one wants the like 3,000 words of boomph around like why eggs and bacon matters so much to you personally, and your aunt once had eggs and bacon. Actually, like, you just want the recipe, or like you're like, what temperature do I cook this on? And actually all these things are still ranking, but they're crap. They're crap content, a lot of them. And I think the same thing's applicable, you know, across sectors, really. Is your content engaging? Is it impactful? Does it have an impact for someone? You know, probably not as much as we'd like it to have an impact for everyone that we imagine as marketers. It's probably not, you know, going to make as big a splash as we think. But could it be impactful for someone? Could you take it in person to a CEO you're working with and then be like, oh yeah, this is cool, this is interesting, that makes a good point? I think that's a good bar to have for where quality of content should be.
Anything else on the misconceptions of like where you think businesses maybe go wrong with their content at all? Anything else?
No, I think I just would re-emphasize what we kind of touched on in the beginning, this need for a strategic foundation. You know, I think that's I imagine it's the same B2C as well, but I can only speak for B2B. But having your purpose and not just like a shopping list of things you want. I'm reading at the moment Richard Rumelt's Good Strategy, Bad Strategy, and he talks about like why there's so much bad, and he's talking like wider business strategy. But he says there's so much bad strategy because it's like what purports to be strategy is like what we wish would happen, but like dressed up in fluff and like nice sounding corporate words. And so I think it's that actually being able to say in a nutshell, what are our business's goals? Why do we believe this will help us meet them? And like, how are we going to overcome the challenges in this process to then be in a better place next year against this set of goals that we've made? And so I'd say that is the one thing that I would like potential, you know, people in the B2B space to take away, is that without the strategy, the content won't pay off. You know, it's just a gamble. You're throwing money at the wall and hoping something sticks.
I'm beginning to think, Ettie, that I need to do more B2B, because your clients are so much more prepared. I might just be working with the wrong brands here. But I think one misconception that is so prevalent in consumer copy is the value, the actual pennies to pounds for copy. So many big brands, household names, I won't mention them. I'm thinking about my first freelance gig, my first project, writing for a huge household name, high street British brand, and I was earning 1 to 3 pence a word and writing 150 word product descriptions, so sexy, as you can imagine, for this whole new website. And the idea now that you could go to a writer and say, I'm going to pay you 1 to 3 pence a word. It's absolutely, it's so dismissive, and where's the research time? Where's any time to think? It's just going to be churning out words for the sake of it because you want to earn the most you can. And I just think the value, especially coming from these household names, they think that people will just want to work with them, and that's why perhaps they offer so little in return. But the value of content has to be seen or identified. Otherwise, you're going to get stuck in the same cycle of poor quality content, not being able to hire good writers, simply because you don't value content. You don't think it's important enough, and it is. Yeah. Ettie, can you remember your first sort of year freelancing and your old rates and what people used to charge? You used to charge.
Yes, gosh, I mean it's changed a lot. I was actually saying to my partner the other day, I was looking back through some emails. I have like all these folders by year, so I look back to when I first started, which would be 2015, and I had an email from clients saying, I think it started out at £40 for a 500-word article. And I mean, that is very, very far removed from what I charge clients for content today. And luckily I didn't charge that much for very long. It started out actually through I think People Per Hour, one of these, one of the Content Millie type places, but just worked hard and fast for anyone that would have me. So I had samples. And then I did the Andy Maslin course on like freelancer rates. And I think it was he that said, just put your rates up until people start saying no. And so very quickly, once I worked out that I can write and it is good, and I do believe that I'm adding some sort of, obviously, like, will grow and learn and get better, but I do believe it's something I can charge money for. I just put my rates up quite a lot. But I still see, I don't know about you, Emily, I see all the time on LinkedIn, or particularly LinkedIn, people posting roles and then saying, which it's a 2,000 word blog post for £60, and some writers still jumping on it. And you think that's just it's not sustainable for anyone in the equation. I think it ties back to this concept of purpose and impact and measuring impact, that for as long as we allow content to be this wishy-washy, it's there for like brand awareness, but we can't measure it and we can't track it and we can't link it to business goals. And when it comes down to it, it's this like nice to have thing that we can cut because it doesn't drive value against anything measurable. Then of course people don't see the value, and that translates for all of us as copywriters into clients that don't want to pay for what we do.
We always like to try and end on a positive, Ettie, I think. And so like how can businesses make sure they start to nail their content?
Oh gosh. Okay, so I think obviously I hope I've said it enough times, if I haven't like beaten the drum loud enough, that they should invest in strategy. But yeah, as I think Emily was touching on, being willing to invest in good content. But I think coming back to this quality of content thing, I personally think that money should go more to quality than to quantity. So investing in the right places, making sure your budget works hard for you. Which actually, we haven't really talked about, like repurposing content. I think that's a key thing to do with whether your budget works. Is, are you wringing the most value you can from the content you have? Or are you just endlessly creating content that gets sucked into this void and then, languishes gathering dust in your blog somewhere? Or are you constantly like feeding that through? And do you have a mechanism to do that? Because if you don't have a set process to do it, it won't get done. It will just always be a thing that would be nice to do one day. So that's what I'd say. Bringing the most value from your content, investing in the right places, and making sure that where you invest stems from a strategic understanding of what you are trying to achieve and how you're trying to achieve it.
Firstly, I think it has to come from the top. So that seeing the value in content needs to be not just someone in marketing deciding. It has to be a more holistic kind of thing from the business. B2C, I think it's, yeah, the value again. So good quality content doesn't cost you 3p a word. So I think it's also about cutting through the noise. What is it that you're in, like, what is it that you are going to say that makes you different? What is your content like compared to your competitors? You know, are you making waves? Are you doing things that, I don't know, other businesses that are the same as you are doing too? And if so, how can you make your content better? How are you doing it differently? Yeah, lots. There's lots to think about, but I think valuing it is my number one.
Yeah. Ruta, any thoughts now we've had the content marketers tell us what's what?
I think always remember the content promotion side of things. So it's not good enough just to go pay someone to make you content. You have to then work really hard to promote it. And if you can do that, then you're probably going to be getting value back out of your content, providing it's decent content to begin with. And also just sometimes it's just a case of getting started. You know, lots of people worry about perfecting content and making sure that everything is, you know, incredibly correct and beautiful and, you know, over polished. And sometimes it's just more important to say something and get started and get into the habit of doing it rather than over polishing and over strategizing to what it might be, because you probably won't get anything out if you're doing that.
Perfect. Be the enemy of progress.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think for me, it's like respect the process as well, and the process and production of content. Going back to the value, actual pounds for words thing that Emily was talking about, is respect the fact that the people who are creating the content are professionals. And they're not just saying it because they want to make money. They actually want you to deliver content that's going to drive value for your business. So yeah, respect that and respect the production process as well. Like, it's worth spending time editing and, you know, getting stuff right from the outset so that you don't then have to briefing really well and then not having to fuck about, because this is the worst one, fuck about once stuff's gone into graphic design. So thank you so much for joining us, Emily and Ettie, and sharing all of your content awesomeness with us. There's a lot to be learnt from both of you, so thank you so much. We could definitely have a whole nother session on content. We probably will at some point, but thank you again, and yeah, we'll see you for the next episode.